Welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. Each week, we hear real time stories from athletes and CEOs on how to maximize performance through an endurance mindset. Let's get started. Well, welcome to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. I'm your host, Greg McDonough. I'm super excited for our guest today. He's a former athlete turned serial entrepreneur whose mission is to empower athletes to excel beyond the field, a testament to his belief in hard work, grit, and adaptability. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Overnght Media Group, Kevin McReynolds. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
It's awesome to have you on the show. And as you know, we love talking about endurance and the endurance mindset. So, Kevin, tell me how your endurance mindset has impacted your life unexpectedly.
Absolutely. I think I kind of have to take this back to college when I was playing at UCLA. I think one of the biggest kind of shifts in my life happened my redshirt sophomore year when I ended up having a couple concussions during preseason, and ended up having to shut me down for the year. And I think that whole kind of shifted my mindset of maybe the NFL is not going to be directly in my future, and I'm going to have to figure out other things of how to shift my life to make sure that I'm successful as I kind of walk down that path. And I think that throughout those, I spent that time kind of working on one, learning lessons from other people, taking boosters out for lunch or coffee or those things and learning the lessons that they had. I think it was also focusing on myself and making sure that I could still be the best human that I could possibly be. And then I think lastly, it was that shift that I think so many athletes really struggle. Me having to have, those concussions, now looking back on it, actually was probably one of the single biggest moments in my life of putting me on the path that I am on today. And I think without those things, I think in enduring through that process and learning, I don't think I would be here today.
That's really insightful, Kevin. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious. I don't know much about concussion protocol and college football, and so I'd love a little bit of education. Does that sideline you out of practice for a year? Did it take you out of the game? Give us a little bit more flavor there, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I had, so how the protocol worked when I was in school was if you had a concussion, you were out for about a week or two until you could pass the test to come back. I was on that path to come back. And unfortunately, I think I took another hit a little too soon. And that's when the decision was to shut me down for the season. Having two concussions back to back like that, I think it comes down to sometimes you got to be a little smarter about those decisions and not rush those things back. And, I have a really good family and some friends that made sure that I was making the right decisions for myself. And I think that's what's really allowed me to understand what's the importance in life is.
Yeah, spot on. You mentioned family and friends and the support that you received. A lot of this and a lot of what we do in life is about community, and it's about our team. It's about the people we love and care for. Go into a little bit more detail of like how, because me as an athlete, right? Somebody says, no, stop. You've twisted your ankle. You've pulled your back. You've got a bad nutrition plan. I'm always trying to figure out a way to get around that, to get the extra training day in, to get my bike ride in. And so when friends and family come to you and say, hey, you really got to stop, or we got to change gears, or let's focus on yourself. Give us a sense of what that was like.
So it's actually a story I don't really talk about too often, but for me, it was one of my best friends. She saw that I was actually going to go play, and we were getting ready for a game that week, and she had saw what was kind of going through and how I was really struggling. And she actually called my mom and my dad at the time, and then called her dad, who was an NFL head coach at the time, and had basically said, hey, Kev's getting ready to go play this game. And they both kind of chatted with me and said, hey, it's not worth it. But I think it's a big part of life and moving forward is having community around you. And without community and building the people and those, and them holding you accountable for the person that you want to be and where they see you going, I don't think that one myself would be where I am, but I don't think a lot of successful people would be where they are. And I think that those are the people that, when things get tough, they're going to sit down and they're going to be there with you. But right, they're not going to also, when you're on your high horse, they're going to bring you down a little bit. And I think that everyone needs that, right? It's that balance in life. And I think if you have the right people around you from community and when you build that community around yourself, and I think one of my mentors also, it's like this tribe mentality
Mm.
of the way that you live your life and having those people around. I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, you're making me think of so many stories that'll stay for another episode. Kevin, you mentioned when we started our conversation talking about the lessons learned and focusing on yourself. And really at the end of the day, these concussions were a gift and allowed you to get onto the path that you are today. Any other examples like that that've come up in your life that you realize that, hey, this is a tough time and you don't want to be dealing with it, and all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over time you realize that was actually a learning experience?
Yeah, I think candidly one of the biggest learning experiences for myself was during COVID. My family suffered more than most during COVID, and essentially of I lost three family members in the first
Mm.
2 months of COVID, and almost lost both my mom, my dad, and my grandmother. Uh, and it was one of those things where dealing with that and having to make decisions, as a kid in his 20s, and I think learning very quickly of life may look very differently if some things have gone a different way. Uh, Allows me to really understand that one, there's a lot of people that are out here, and we all have a different set of circumstances that we have to overcome. Two, it's about setting goals for yourself every day and making sure that your the things that you do every day is what makes you great. And that's, I think, is the biggest thing. And for me, it was going through that time. I was really a dark moment for me in my journey. And I think that what it was is my tribe coming around me and making sure that I was putting together the the best way for me to move forward in my life, and making sure that I could overcome these challenges. And it was I'd already from football, I'd already woken up early and done those things and constantly worked out, but it's making sure that you're staying consistent with those things. And I think, especially during COVID for me, I ballooned up to 390 pounds. And, it was one of those things for me that was really a challenge because I'd never been that big a day in my life. And one, it was overcoming for my health, right? Of, walking every day, lifting and getting back on the horse in that way. But I think for me, that struggle continued to be that no one's going to want it for you. You have to want it yourself. And I think
Mm.
so many people really struggle in that way of when things aren't going wrong, when things are going wrong, they want to blame everyone else. And I think that you got to understand that if you want to excel in life and have the life that you want, it's about you, right? And I think that it's about putting yourself in the best possible position so that when those opportunities do come, you can take advantage of them. And that comes with health. That comes with taking the time to do the little things. That comes with that networking, maybe that extra phone call that you didn't want to make, or that extra email you didn't want to do. And typically I find that progress is behind the things that we don't want to do, right? That is typically where you find progress. Those things that seem really hard to do, that is where progress is typically lying right behind. And I think that's been the biggest kind of thing for me of overcoming what happened to my family, overcoming the concussions, overcoming any of these type of things. I think it's understanding that it's not just about you. It's understanding of one, it takes a tribe. Two, you have to prepare yourself to accept those opportunities. And three, progress is behind that work that you just typically don't want to do.
Kevin, that's so well said. I love just recapturing that progress. It is behind the work you really don't want to do. People from time all the time ask me about, I do Ironman races, as you know, and I'm a back of the packer, but I get to the finish line and my family's there, and it's just a beautiful moment for me. Um, but it also creates and forces a lifestyle that, to your point, when somebody asks me, how do you actually get all that training in and get to the finish line? And it's not race day. That's the difficult part. The difficult part is that Saturday morning at 6 a.m. when it's raining outside and you just want to stay in bed, and it's doing the work when nobody's watching.
I think that voice in our head for athletes is something that I think is you don't want to let yourself down. I think that you have to have a higher belief in yourself than others than others do, right? Like others' expectation might be here, but yours needs to be so much higher than that of
Yeah.
what you can do yourself. And I think a lot of times it's understanding of being able to admit when you're wrong, but being able to understand that there's progress moving forward. But I think it's one of those things also of if you are not tough on yourself, who is going to be there? Like, who's going to do that for you? Right. Like, everyone has a significant other or someone that cares about them and those things. But that work starts with yourself. And that's something that I think was always instilled in me from athletics. And, understanding that most of the work is done in the quiet, in the dark room, and the understanding that it's not always going to be perfect conditions. Um, and we always had this kind of thing at UCLA. We were really big on Sun Tzu, and it was sharpen your sword quietly, right? It
Neat.
was this concept that, be comfortable with the uncomfortable and understanding that things are going to go wrong and you just have to overcome that.
I love that. Sharpen your sword quietly. Kevin, you mentioned earlier, you started talking about staying consistent, and during COVID, getting out and walking every day, this consistency. Do you have any tips or tricks that you rely on to stay consistent?
I think for me, it's interesting because I travel a lot. As for what we do and going to all the different games that we have on our platform at Overnght, but I think it's making sure that if I'm going to get up early, and especially if I know I have a flight is packing the day before, not doing it the morning of. I think it's also understanding that you got to create lists for yourself and you got to understand um, how your habits are. We all have habits, whether they're good or bad, they're still habits. And you got to understand how to counteract those to give yourself the shot to win. I think a lot of it is held in preparation
Mhm.
and understanding what's really important. And so for me, it's if I have a flight in the morning, you got to pack the night before. I think on the other side of it is if I know something is really important, do research, understand what the topic, understand the people, and making sure that you're not just walking into a room cold. I think that it's doing the little things that helps prepare you for that next step and not being completely blindsided by something. And as much of myself being the type of person that likes to be very much off the cuff, I think that that preparation that goes to understanding the person that you're going to be in a room with and understanding the things that they like and they care about because it's not all about us, it's about them and being able to connect with one another. I mean, personally, those tricks of I wouldn't even call them tricks. I just think it's called good habits of understanding one, what you're doing, what you're accomplishing, and then two, preparing and putting in place the things that you need to be successful. And I think that we all have things that we like to stay up later. We like to work and those things. But if you stay up really late, you may not have the best day that next day. And you got to understand, you got to prepare your body. Body needs sleep. And that's something that I work on myself because sometimes I stay up and I work too. But I think it's the staying consistency over time of just because you miss one day doesn't mean you have to miss the next day. And that consistency of working out, eating the right things, having the right people around you, and making the right decisions will take you as far as you need to be.
You know what, you mentioned travel, and you travel much more than I do, I believe. I struggle with travel and staying consistent, right? I end up in a city for work or pleasure or whichever, and I have a training routine that's pretty standard and pretty rudimentary when I'm here at home or in the local area. But once I get on an airplane, it it's tough for me to kind of stay consistent. Any tricks that I could pull from you of multi-city trips, staying consistent with your workout, staying consistent with um any insight for me?
What I typically do is when I look at a hotel or something like that, I always check out the gym. That's the most important thing in my book is
Mm,
checking out the gym and making sure that it's somewhere. If I have to spend a little bit more money to stay somewhere with a really good gym, that's probably what I'll do. I think on the other side of it is those if it's leg day or it depends on how long you're gone. One, but I think if it's understanding body weight exercises, I think it's understanding that flexibility is really important, especially when you're on flights and you're traveling and those things, and making sure that you're stretching and taking care of and your nutrition and taking the right amount of water. I think is because I think when we travel sorry, when we travel, I don't think a lot of us realize how much we're dehydrating ourselves, especially when we're flying. And I think that's a big part of it, especially with that rest and recovery standpoint. But I think personally, I'm always just trying to find the best gym and then in the local
mm.
area, making sure that I can stay on top of that and making sure I'm still staying consistent over time.
I appreciate that. That's super helpful. I'm just gonna shift gears on you. I'd love to talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Uh, can you start us like where Overnight was born and bred, and then walk us through your story, and then tell us a lot more about what it's doing today?
Absolutely. So Overnight started in 2021. It was this concept that a bunch of my friends had gotten home from the Olympics. They'd all told me about how there was no community in their sport. They had just won gold medals, silver medals, all of these different medals, and had a lot of really great achievements in their athletic careers. And they would explain how there was nowhere to watch their sports. And from then I kind of took that with me of let's go solve a problem.
Mm.
And so Overnight launched in 2023 commercially. We launched with just water polo. We started with USA Water Polo and water polo as a whole, and the we are an Olympic sports streaming platform that's subscription based. We've worked with over 65 universities around the country. We're streamed in about 28 countries around the world. We've been able to expand pretty quickly, covering sports from gymnastics to water polo to rowing, artistic swimming, fencing, and a number of other sports. And what we really found is building that community, one, making it accessible for people to watch the content that they want. But I keep coming back to that community piece because that community piece is what's most important of making it super accessible and easy for people to find the content that they want, but engage with that content as well.
So, are you sending production teams out to these events to do the video work, or does the university already have sort of like the in on campus internal, you know, television streaming that they could watch the college sports, but it's just not getting out to the world?
So what we kind of found is one some conferences and schools struggle with just producing an Olympic sports standpoint. Typically, most people wouldn't assume that there's large viewership in these sports, and that's what we kind of found is that ability to go into those spaces and acquire those sports for long-term media rights agreements and going from there. But I think from our perspective, it's when we go into sports, I think it's one, we found that through their student production systems that they already can produce that content. So they produce the content and they send it to us. We only produce about 10% of the overall content that is on Overnight. But outside of that, though, we work with those schools and provide opportunities for whether it be athletes that want to get into production or local production at those schools for students to get the work that they want to be a part of a production and understand how those things work. I think we've been able to do some really great things with that and providing opportunities for these students to have a home when they do eventually graduate.
Any fun stories from the business side, the entrepreneurial side that you've kind of stumbled into, or anything unexpected so far?
I think every day is an unexpected day, but I think from an entrepreneurship goal and the things that I've done, I've been able, I'm 31 and I've been able to sell a business already at this point. My last startup that I ran business development for was the largest meme company in the world. We had over 130 meme accounts and over 350 million followers on those accounts. And then leading into what I'm doing now, I think it's just, I wouldn't say there's funny stories, but I think it's just about finding purpose in those things, and then you'll love it every day, no matter what ends up popping up.
So I got to ask, how'd you get into you said it was a meme business? How'd you get into that originally?
It kind of comes back to the originally of the kind of networking that I would do when I was injured, and a booster from UCLA came back and said, "Hey, Kev, I got an opportunity for you." And I kind of worked my way up from being, a coordinator, worked my way up to manager, and then working my way up to running business development. And that's kind of how that pathway started, and creating those partnerships. Because the way that I've always looked at business is everyone can win. You just have to find a way for it to make sense. And I think that's the way that I look at life, as well. And that pathway of how I got to memes was a little unorthodox, obviously, but understanding that how to garner people's attention and to catch them very quickly, I think those things have been able to lead me into the path of Overnght. And I think understanding those things has been really a key for me.
So yeah, yeah. So 5 years from now, you're looking back. Where is Overnght?
I think Overnght has a chance to be a large scale media organization that covers not just sports, but a number of other verticals as well. I think that we have the people, and I think we've surrounded ourselves with really good people. And it's a really good team atmosphere. But I think we also have amazing investors that understand the vision of what we're trying to build, like Samantha Card, Ron and Stephanie Rivera, um, Sandy Barber, former AD at Penn State, and having some of these people be a part of what we're building and understanding and seeing that vision and believing in me and my team, I think is key. Um, I think we know the pathway that we're going to be on, and that we're currently on, and we know the what we're building here is special. And we've been able to change the lives of parents from overseas, being able to watch their kids, as mostly Olympic sports athletes in the United States are foreigners. Um, I say there's a large, I would say not most, but a good portion of them are not from the U.S. And so we're able to provide an opportunity so that parents and friends and family from all over the world can see their athletes and their people excel. And that's what I'm in the business of doing, is connecting people and making sure people can see that content that they want to see. And I think that I can do that, and no matter what vertical that we go into, because it's about the people that we have here. And I think the people we have at Overnght are special. And I think the investors that we do as well are special. And that's what I'm looking forward to.
Any specific characteristics that you see across your team?
Ooh, it's one thing. It's grit. And it's the same way. It's the same way for even our investors, right? It's being able to be a self-starter, being able to understand no matter how many times you get knocked down, you can get back up. I think it's understanding that teamwork that we all have as well. We all communicate like a typical I would say organization. We're very blunt to one another because that's what's needed. I think when in communication and business, I think oftentimes we try to sugarcoat things to make it sound better. But I think when you sugarcoat things, you lose the authenticity, and I think you lose the what is truly being said because it gets lost in the sugarcoating. And I think that with our team, we don't, because we don't have to do that, things get solved faster, and we understand what the pain points are, and we can move forward and we can create a strategy with it. And I think that athletics kind of feel that we have, and being that most of the people on our team were in a sport, or our investors most of them were in a sport as well, they understand that communication style. And I think that's really worked out well for us.
Are you looking for any specific new team member now?
I think right now we're looking at, I don't know if a team member is, if something pops up that makes a lot of sense, absolutely. But anytime what I would say is we're going to add people to Overnght is people that have grit, that people understand how to work well in a team, and people that are self starters. That's one. And then on the other side, we're always looking for strategic partners or new investors or those things that share that vision of understanding of wanting to build for Olympic sports, but understanding that there's a pathway to doing these things and there's a right way to do these things, and that's what we're going to do.
So you pull out your magic wand, you wave it, our community then delivers something to you. What do you most desired for Overnght right now that could be a game changer?
Strategic partners, people that understand what we're trying to build, that are from an Olympic sport, that understand that, like, hey, I want to be able to see that content. I don't see enough of the content that I desire, whether that be baseball, softball, hockey. It doesn't matter. We want people that can open doors, and we want to work with people. And I think that's what it comes down to is understanding of, if we can find someone that opens doors, we love that and we appreciate it.
So I'm curious about the technology side of the platform. Clearly, you've solved a problem there that others either haven't seen or haven't been able to solve using the right technologies. How have you? Granted, it's probably corporate secret, but I'm curious. Like, how did you kind of fix that, solve that problem that like the technological problem that others have struggled with?
Are you referring to Netflix and the boxing this weekend, or are you referring to just more of on the background portion of it?
Like the more the background portion, but I love to hear your Netflix and a boxing story as well. But like this light bulb just turned on for me of like, how has somebody else not solved this yet? And that's always like this. These entrepreneurial questions are fantastic, right? And it's you and your team with the vision. Um, but this stuff had been streaming somewhere else, and no one's put the dots together. So I'm wondering if it was like a technology breakthrough or the hustle of the grit. Like, really, what was the secret sauce to get this thing moving?
I think it was more of the hustle and the grit.
Awesome.
The technology is there, right? But I think it's more so about relationships that are super important. It's about understanding and having a vision and seeing it through. I think a lot of people from an entrepreneurship side, at least what I see, right, is so many people want to do a business plan till they're blue in the face, right? But most people don't realize that if you've done anything big in life, whether we all have an idea in athletics or anything, that like this is how this is going to go, and then you get punched in the face, and all of a sudden it all changes. And I think just go. Like how we started was this concept of like, here's an idea, let's just go do it. And I think that that's what created the opportunity. Um, in football growing up, there was always this kind of concept of like, if you make a mistake, but you're moving fast, you'll correct yourself. 9 times out of 10, you'll correct yourself. Right. Effort is something that can't be taught. So it's one of those things where if you're moving fast and you're really moving towards that goal, you'll probably correct yourself. And I think that's the way that we've moved forward. And I think from a business standpoint and opportunity, it's that persistence that we have to get things done, I think is one. I think on the other side of it, I think it's putting yourself in the situation to be able to win. And as I said earlier, it's preparing yourself for that thing to come. And then I think third, it was, we have amazing people here. And I think from a technology standpoint, I have a great staff, and I wouldn't be able to do the things that I do without them. And it's I always live with this concept of there's no me without we. And so then that's the way that we live by, and that's the way we work at Overnght.
That's awesome. So thank you for articulating a great response to my bumbling question. Kevin, we've got an audience member who's listening to the show today. She's a college athlete. She's been living the volleyball dream for her entire life and is sort of contemplating business. What advice would you give her?
What I would give her is find what you're truly passionate about and go do it. You're young enough where failure's not really an option. It's gonna go work. It's gonna work out, right? And so what I would say is, if you're gonna put yourself out there, go do something hard, and the success is behind the thing that you don't want to do, and that
Mm,
growth. Absolutely.
100%. You made my skin tingle just talking about it. Kevin, an audience member wants to get in touch with you. What's your social media platform of choice?
Absolutely. You can reach me on Instagram at Kevin McReynolds Jr. And then that's probably the best one. Or you can reach me on email at kevin@overnght.com. There's no I in overnight.
Awesome. And we'll include those links in the show notes. I think you summed up our show really well there at the end when you said success is in the work that we don't want to do. I'll leave it with that. Kevin, you've been awesome to have you on the show. Your insights have been fantastic. I love your platform. I've been playing around with it for the last couple of weeks. Haven't subscribed yet, but I will. My daughter is going to be very fascinated with the rowing aspects of it. Audience members, if you got some value out of the show, please like the show. Please subscribe to our channel. Let's spread Kevin's learnings to this greater community and have an impact. Kevin, again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, sir, for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Endurance Officer Podcast. To hear more inspiring stories and strategies around the endurance mindset, be sure to subscribe below or visit us at chiefenduranceofficer.com. Until next time, keep pushing those limits